Thanks, Kathy. Let's talk a little bit about digital experiences without drama. I'm Nick Barber, a vice president at Insight Partners. I joined Insight several months ago after spending 6 years at Forrester Research, focused specifically on digital experiences. So I know a bit about the space, and I brought that knowledge over to Insight, and I'm using it as I'm talking with our portfolio of startups. In fact, we've got more than 400 startups at Insight Partners, which is a private equity venture capital firm with 25 plus years experience in the software space, 125 strategic exits, and $30 billion of capital commitments. So as we jump into today, I want to start looking at what is the state of digital experiences, and we're going to inform that using some data. So we asked a share of US adults, could you live without the internet? And 51% of Gen Z said we could definitely not live without the internet. This is what we turn to get our information, to make our purchases, to connect and communicate. As you move into sort of the older cohorts, the millennials, which I belong to, 21% say they couldn't live without the internet, definitely could not live without the internet. And as these Gen Z cohorts and millennials move into greater purchasing power, decision-making, it's going to be more and more important to create experiences that connect with them on the channels that they want to connect in, within the experiences that they want to drive. So in order to understand where we're going in the market, let's look at where we've come from. So if we rewind the clock 30 or so years ago, web experiences were simple because channel complexity just didn't exist. In the early days of the web, you see over there on the right-hand side, Yahoo, the homepage, Yahoo effectively tried to categorize the internet. If you wanted to share a web page or an experience with someone, you needed to call them over to your desk like we see in that image. There was no easy way to bring experiences to the masses, to have that collaborative experience. And that's because the channels weren't very complex. It was relatively simple because there was literally only one channel to have a digital experience on, and it was a computer, and it was through desktop web environments. Now, with the emergence of IoT and wearables, you see that landscape rapidly changing and becoming more and more complex. And our world really started to evolve from the early days of the web. And with that, the software that supported those experiences began to evolve too. In fact, as more users and businesses wanted to create more experience, democratization came in waves, but it served specific users. In the early days of the web, thinking back to the early 2000s or the late 90s, we started to see kind of web CMS focus really on that technical user. Web admins, globalization, templates and components, and really sort of an on-prem or licensed deployment model. As we moved into the 2000s, the early 2000s into the 2010s, you started to see the rise of the experience CMS. And finally, what you see is what you get. The great thing about this, I joke, is that at this point, everyone could create a web experience. The awful thing at this point was that everyone could create a web experience. As we moved on in time into the 2010s and into the sort of mid-2010s, you started to see headless come about. And as you've noticed here, we've kind of been the pendulum has been swinging back and forth. We started with web CMS that really focused on that technical user. Experience CMS catered to the business user. Headless CMS, the pendulum going back, focusing on the technical user. And the challenge here, most recently with headless CMS, was that those business users said, how do I update my page? How do I create an experience? Because this was something that really catered to those technical users in creating content and creating those experiences, and really left out those business teams, those practitioners. Now, in the 2020s, well, what do we have to create those digital experiences, to really democratize those digital experiences? We're going to get to that in just a second. The challenge really in all of this is bridging that divide. You saw before on the previous slide, the pendulum swung between business users and technical users, those developers and those business teams. And up until now, there really hasn't been a single tool that has satisfied both the needs of the developers and the business teams. It was almost like they were at odds with each other. Instead, there's a new category emerging that is bringing together those teams of developers and those business teams to collaborate, to be on the same page, to play towards the same goals and metrics as they look to serve their customers. And we know that this is important because CMOs said in the midst of the pandemic, 80% of CMOs said that their customers have placed increased value on digital experiences during the pandemic. And because the pandemic went on for so long, those just didn't become preferences. Those became habits that customers are going to be pulling through, well after the pandemic concludes. These digital habits are here to stay. So how do we as businesses meet those customers' expectations and create great customer experiences through those great digital experiences? Well, we think it's this idea of digital experience composition. Digital experience composition is what gets those business teams and the developers to work towards a single goal. That goal being excellent digital experiences that power differentiated customer experiences. And digital experience composition is going to be that tool, that platform, that approach that satisfies the needs of both the business teams and the technical teams. And it's because these complex customer journeys require composable digital experiences. Now, over on the right-hand side, it's this sort of journey, or it is this journey that your customers follow as they discover your product, explore it, transact or buy, onboard, use, engage, and advocate. Probably looks like the funnel that you use in your business or the steps that your customer goes through on the journey. But it's important to think about this. And the challenge here for a lot of companies is that each phase of that customer journey probably has a different team associated with it internally. It probably has a different technology associated with it internally. You can think about, well, maybe the discover phase focuses on our advertising technology, and the explore phase is our marketing technology, and the transact phase is our commerce engine, and so on and so forth. You've got customer service and support, social, loyalty, all of those things fueling into the different stages of the customer journey. And as the customer moves through that process, it's very rocky. It's friction-filled, and it's challenging for them to navigate. So this means that organizations have to do it differently. They have to adopt a tool that really sort of smooths out that customer journey. They have to adopt a platform that smooths out that customer journey, because we know that brands certainly live in this world of hyper adoption and hyper abandonment. It's so easy now to start using a new service or a new product, and it's just as easy to switch. We know additionally that millennials, who make up the largest cohort of the workforce today, use more than 4 connected devices on a daily basis. So you as a business have to be able to meet that customer where they are, where they want to do business with you. We know that brands must be able to deliver contextually relevant content in a customer's moment of need and in their preferred channel. Sounds like personalization, right? Well, in order to deliver a personalized experience, you have to deliver value and relevancy. So there's a lot of signals that you need to be able to process in order to deliver that differentiated experience. But oftentimes, as I mentioned before, those transition points within the customer journey are broken, and they create this rocky feeling for the customer. So you need to work on sort of smoothing those out. And we think digital experience composition is one of the ways that you can do that. So what are the promises of composability? Well, there's speed, there's reliability, and there's collaboration as the core promises of composable. But let's sort of unpack that more and talk about that a little bit more. So one is composability will support increased content velocity throughout the customer journey. What does that mean? Well, when you think about personalized experiences, you have to think about having all of those different permutations of content and of a story available at the ready into the channel that the customer is expecting it to be on. So increased content velocity is one. Maximize collaboration between all kinds of users. This idea that it's no longer the business teams and the developers at odds with each other, but it's them working together in a collaborative environment, really with the goal of serving that customer better. It's about speedy deployments, delivering fast time to value. When I was a Forrester analyst, we would often speak with customers who would say, yeah, you know, we're deploying a new system. We know it's going to take 12, 18, 24 months before we can actually get up and running. And they were willing to accept that because they didn't know anything different. You know, now it's about how can you deploy quickly and see that time to value, that fast time to value measured in, you know, days or weeks or potentially even hours rather than months and years. Fast, reliable performance regardless of channel. We know that, for example, Google is prioritizing sites and experiences that deliver on that promise of performance. And last but not least, enhanced employee experiences to attract and retain talent. If you're able to enable your employees to create cutting-edge digital experiences that serve customers in unique and different ways, think about how beneficial that could be for engaging employees with work, having employees feel like they're empowered to create something new and different. So from a attraction and retention standpoint of employees, this idea of digital experience composition aligns very well to that. You might say, well, am I ready to take advantage of digital experience composition? Well, we think it supports all levels of digital maturity. Legacy platforms have oftentimes favored those developers or those business teams, as we saw in the previous slides. But digital experience composition can bridge that gap. As you look over here on the right-hand side, a typical sort of head-on deployment where you've got sort of the traditional CMS tends to resonate with kind of beginners on their digital maturity journey. A hybrid deployment might align with those beginners or those intermediates on the digital maturity curve. Headless, as I looked at this at Forrester, oftentimes mapped to very, very advanced organizations within the top 10 to 20% of the digital maturity curve. Headless tended to, focus on those use cases, but digital experience composition can align with organizations anywhere along that digital experience curve. We also found, as we did some research, that headless became a feature, not a market. And it wasn't right for everyone. So with digital experience composition, you don't have to sacrifice capabilities depending on what maturity level you are as an organization. It's a technology, it's a platform, it's an approach that's going to grow with you as you grow as a business. All right, so as we kind of come to a close here, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in the market, the impact that those trends are having, and then the next steps that you can do to sort of really adopt and embody that trend in the space. So the first trend is consolidation and convergence. And what we're seeing in the market is really this sort of spectrum where it's getting harder to tell where workflow technology ends and content creation tools begin, and content repository and content delivery tools end and begin. So instead of seeing clear divides, we're starting to see this overlap. And the impact in the market is really tool overlap and ultimately wasted spending. So our advice for organizations today is to really conduct your gap and overlap assessment before investing in those new tools, because you can identify where you might be having double spend in an area, where you might be able to pull back because you've got that covered from your DAM or your workflow tool or your CDN. May be able to do double duty there. So there's an area where you can kind of rationalize your spend, and particularly for this environment, you might kind of pull back some of your spend or redeploy it to other areas. Artificial intelligence infusion. We're seeing AI not become just this thing that's off to the side, but it's something that's embedded in all of your tools and all of your systems. And one of the things that I think I'm particularly interested in is how can AI start to unlock scalable content? How can it get that scalable content to market quickly? And it really starts with creating this foundational understanding of your content. And this is where AI can start to come in. AI can start to come into your large libraries of content and start to enrich that content with AI metadata that's ultimately going to be able to drive atomization and personalization. Because you can't personalize an experience without understanding both your customer and your content. And AI is a way to help understand your content better so that you can map that to the personalized experiences with greater accuracy. Automation. So, automation, you can think about it in a lot of different ways. But when it comes to digital experience composition, when it comes to your content, it's about how can we start to get our content and experiences to market faster and start to remove some of the human element that may be a bottleneck in the process. So I think about automation really, from a how do I automate a workflow to maybe get content or to do something to content to get it to market faster. I think about it in a creative workflow. So how do you embed automation in your creative workflows to make creators more productive, to allow them to do what they do best, which is create, rather than be bogged down with overwhelming process that stifles creativity. So offload those things to automation and allow your creators to focus on what they do best. And then lastly, a trend that we're seeing is intelligent creativity and collaboration. This idea that everyone becomes a creator. It's not just your creative team within your marketing department or your creative agency, but it's about enabling everyone, there's sort of democratization of creativity to enable both business and power users to create. It's not just those people who live inside of Photoshop or Illustrator, but it's business users too, around unlocking some of these tools so that they can be creators as well. And it's about kind of taking this iterative approach and using these digital collaboration tools so that it's not this big unveiling of the final project, but it's kind of taking these sort of micro steps along the way and constantly iterating so that in effect, you can't go wrong when you deploy a new digital experience or a new piece of content, because you've been getting that feedback all along the way to make you more successful. And with that, I want to thank you for spending some time out of your busy day to talk about digital experiences without the drama, something that you can adopt today and really start to ratchet up those customer experiences. Thanks, everyone. Back over to Kathy.